So today we're talking about how to prioritize your time. And I really find that, at least for me, it all fits into maybe some ideas that I have about time and abundance that have held me back in the past and that I've had to do a lot of work to get over. So that's what I want to share with you today: how to make the most of the time that you have, the limited time you have, especially since I know that a lot of you have other jobs that you're working on. And so there's often this idea that you have to do like all the things in order to be successful. And I think, especially today, with so many different platforms, it can just be overwhelming. So before I jump in, I just want to say that in my case, I do have Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, and now TikTok, which I may or may not continue with, just because in the beginning, Twitter was the thing, and then Facebook was the thing. But now I think they're both gigantic wastes of time. And except for Facebook groups can sometimes be good. So I would do that rather than a fan page these days. Um, and Pinterest definitely brings in traffic, so that's good. YouTube, similar, although it's a lot of work. And so I just want to acknowledge, before jumping into this and telling you that you should be prioritizing, that even though it seems like I'm not, we put almost nothing into Facebook and Twitter these days. We tweet, we share on Facebook, but it's just more of a formality these days than anything. So the things that really take my attention these days are YouTube. I do post on Instagram, but I don't really engage on there trying to get followers, and I haven't for, I kind of never did that. So I'm not saying you shouldn't if that's going to be one of your areas of focus, but I am saying that I don't. So I just sharing what I do. And then YouTube is definitely something that is fun for me now, after a lot of practice and frustration, because I just felt like I wasn't natural in front of the camera, which I know we've talked about. So the blog, though, will always be my main thing. It's my main money maker. It's the most important thing for me. So it's my number one. And today I hope we can focus in on what should be your number one, which for each of you, it might be different. And with that, I will share my screen. Okay. I think I have to, yes, okay. Just gonna put that there. Let's see. Okay, so let's dismantle some bullshit beliefs that hold us back and talk about time management so that you can be more effective with the time you have and not feel like you're being pulled in a billion different directions. So today we're going to discuss money and abundance beliefs, hard work versus smart work, time limitations and the need to be busy, and maybe some agreements we've made in the past that all hold us back. So first, let's talk about limiting money beliefs that keep us away from money. And this has to do with time as well. Taylor Swift features big in this particular presentation, FYI. So the first big money belief, I think, that I believe and that a lot of people believe, is that it only comes from hard work. And I think that that's oftentimes the case, that hard work is what helps us to get what we want. But at the same time, oh, hang on, I'm going to let Laura in. Should be down here. Key, admit. And am I connected to my AirPods? That's better.
Back to this. Okay. You and Laura? Cool. So are we sure that we have to be working super hard in order to have money? So the thing about money is, I think we can agree there's kind of four categories that people tend to fall into. There's people who get money easily with little work. There are people who have money already, have little money, but also don't really work. There are people who work a lot but have little money. And I think a lot of people fall into this category, working super hard just to make a small amount of money. And then people who work a lot and have a lot of money, right? So those are kind of the four categories. And we all probably fall into one of these at this point or at some point in our lives. For me, it's tended to be works a lot and has, I'm not going to say like tons and tons of money, but I had a well-paying job when I was younger, and Be My Travel Muse is a well-paying job now. But I definitely fell into the works a lot but has little money at some point as well. And when I first started traveling and first started my blog, I had little money and I also didn't work a lot because I was enjoying myself. So then I think we can agree it also just doesn't always have to be true that hard work is required in order to get money, because there are plenty of people out there who don't work super hard and yet they do have money, and they're not necessarily just trust fund babies. And I'll get to my example in a second here. But here are some money questions that I encourage you to actually journal on and write down in your journal, in terms of how you get to ease with money. So how would it look if it were easier? And really think about this. I mean, how would it look if it were easier for you to get money? Maybe you would have more job opportunities. So how would you act if you had more job opportunities? What would you be doing in order to get those opportunities? Are you picturing, say, $1 million as far and away from you? Does it seem like almost impossible to have that much money? And are you putting money on a pedestal? And I think a lot of people do this, where it's like, oh, $1 million could never happen. But if you think it could never happen, it won't ever happen. So reality is going to match your worldview and the lens with which you act. So what if you already had actually the abundance and the money that you wanted? How would you act differently? And this is something that I've gone over for like years with my life coach, and we're always kind of talking about already living in such a way where I have what I want, and how would things be different. And it actually has really helped with manifesting, for one thing, a better relationship. Also having more abundance. It really does work that if you believe that you deserve it and you act in accordance with someone who already has the things you want, you tend to attract the things that you actually want. So if I'm the kind of person who's like, yeah, I'm a 6-figure entrepreneur, I'm going to take the actions required to get me there. And it just somehow kind of triggers some kind of law of attraction in the universe, where it's like, okay, now that I've decided that this is what I'm going to have, it does come to you. And I think last week when we were talking, Laura, you mentioned that having lost your job was actually a really good thing in terms of the blog, and that things worked out. And I found the same. Like I've had some 11-hour moments, and by just recommitting and being like, no, this is going to work, I'm going to do this, I was able to pull through. So I really think that commitment and that belief that you deserve to have abundance from your work are important. So if this sounds like really woo woo, I do encourage you, just write it down. Like, bear with me, humor me, put this all down in a journal, and actually maybe fill a whole page on how it would look if it were easier, how maybe money is put on a pedestal for you. And I would fill another page with, how would I act if I already had what I wanted? How would you carry yourself? How would you go about your day? What does someone who already has what you want look like? What is their daily practices? So this stuff really does work. And the more skeptical you are, I think the more you need to try it. So this is my example. Our call was Sylvia. She was the first person who we talked to in the Travel Blog Accelerator for our interview. And I remember meeting her at TravelCon, this most recent one, and just being really blown away when she told me that she only works like 4 to 5 hours per week, and is making enough money to be very comfortable in Norway. And then I heard through the grapevine that she's basically almost at the 7-figure mark. So she has traffic, but it's not crazy huge. Her main focus is definitely on her blog. If you follow her on social media, you will notice that she is great at photography. So she does a very good job of making Norway look as magical as it is. She occupied a clever and very lucrative niche, Norway. If you are occupying, say, the Philippines, no matter how popular you are, it's going to be a lot harder to make good money off of that. But for her, she's got ads that are displaying to probably Americans and also Norwegians. These are very lucrative markets. If someone is so enchanted by her blog and her itinerary that they decide to follow everything she says, she's getting really good affiliates from hotel bookings and tours, because all of these things are really expensive, right? So how can you get some of that? That's what I really want to encourage everyone to think about today, because for Sylvia, she's one of those people who doesn't work a lot but has money. And talking to her, it just sounds like it's very easy for her. And so I feel like she's got this sort of belief system down pat in a way that really works for her. So she's living where she wants to. She's making the money she wants to. She's working the hours that she wants to. And she's not the only blogger I know of who had this kind of thing going. Rachel Jones, before she passed away, was also making about 7 figures with her blog, Hippie and Heels. And she just cornered the India market really well. And yes, India can be a cheap place to travel, but she had some really lucrative brand partnerships that she was able to negotiate. And she had very high traffic on her blog, like in the millions per month. So these are two different ways of getting there, but they both were doing great. So again, how would it look if it were easier? For me, that means only working on projects that come from integrity and passion and leaving the rest. Leaning into what I'm really good at and then charging more for my time. Oh, it looks like I doubled it up but made it bigger. So for me, working on projects that come from integrity means writing on the blog because I love writing, making more videos because I do really love YouTube, and it has been growing and working for me. So for me, 2021 is going to look like that, just coming out with really amazing content, going back to my passions, and worrying less about the things that I can't control, like algorithms and social media that is not growing for me, and maybe just doubling down on the things that are working for me. And I think that I'm going to make more money in the long run doing that. So now let's talk about some productivity beliefs. Good work versus busy work. So another thing that I really encourage you to journal on, even if it seems very tedious, is to write down throughout the day what you're spending your time on. And or you can also look at your phone and it tells you how many hours per day you spend on it. And it's a really sobering thing to see that it's like 4 hours, 5 hours, a lot of hours somehow sucked into this super addictive device. So do write down when you're using certain apps and what you do throughout your day. So morning, wake up, have coffee, meditate, journal. What are you doing next? Every time that you open your phone, are you making a conscious decision to do it? Or are you just kind of doing it because you're waiting in line, or because you are bored, or you're just, I don't know, something's taking a while to upload? The more that we unconsciously take our phone out and just scroll, the more that we're training ourselves to do that. And it's just such a big time waste. And I think it's not good for us mentally either. So are you using social media super consciously? I don't read the news. That's a big one for me, like zero. And I still am informed. And anytime anything big happens, I still find out about it because people tell me, or like the salon that I go to tells me that they have to close, or my spin studio tells me that we have to wear masks in the studio now. Like I still find out about things that are happening in the world. I'm not living in the dark. So I just let other people bring the news to me, and it works out pretty well that way. And I think I'm generally more relaxed and happier. Email's a big one. Do you only have certain times in the morning and in the evening when you check it? Are you using it for dopamine? This is a big one for me because I've deleted most of the social media from my phone. So sometimes what I'll do is just keep checking my email. But really, it doesn't need to be checked more than once in the morning and once in the evening. If something is super time sensitive, then I guess feel free to check. But usually things aren't. And we've just kind of trained ourselves to handle everything as though it needs to be done right now. It's super high priority. And the question is it really? So please do, as you go throughout your day, I know it will feel tedious, write down what you're doing at every moment, because this could actually be a life-changing practice that shows you how you're spending your time. And you might find that you've been wasting a lot of it on things that you don't want to spend your time on. So let's cut the busy work out. This is why we journal and intention before sitting down to do the work. It's super important to do this rather than just picking up your phone first thing in the morning and scrolling and looking at messages and letting your day get taken away from you. And I know that this is sort of the habit. So you've got to replace that habit with a different morning ritual. So it doesn't have to take a long time. For me, it's coffee, meditation, and journaling. And then I get to what I'm doing, and I just am working less and less because I'm super clear on how I'm going to spend my time. So I think we also have to let go of that myth that a blogger should be doing all the things, because Sylvia really doesn't, and she's doing really well. And then Lauren, who's going to come talk to us later on this month, also doesn't even have, I think, Instagram. I think it's just Facebook, because her Facebook page still does well for her, and her blog. And then I think she's got a pretty powerful email list as well. But I can tell you from firsthand experience that she is pretty good with affiliates. She's been selling Wander Babe stuff pretty well. Also, that's how she makes most of her money, through her recommendations for hotels and activities and gear. So she's doing quite well, livable wage, living in England on her wage and now New Zealand. And she also is not doing all the things. She's just focusing on the things that are closest to money. So I think maybe you've heard of the 80-20 rule before, but if not, it argues that basically 80% of our results are really coming from 20% of the things that we're doing. So what is the 20% that brings you closer to money? And what can you do to prioritize that 20%? And for example, if you're trying to grow on a social network and it's not fun for you and it's just not working for you, how necessary is this social network really? Yes, I do make a good amount of money from Instagram, and it has been super important for me. But I think starting out right now could be really difficult unless you are just like super committed to it, laser focused, and have a super clear, obvious niche, and are doing really well with networking within that niche. So if you can't sort of satisfy those things and your photography is really good, then maybe there's something else out there for you that's going to be better, a better use of your time. So don't keep focusing on parts that don't contribute to the health of your organization. You've got to decide what is the one most important thing that is driving you forward, and nothing else can be more important than that thing. And really, it's you. So if you are running yourself ragged, putting a bunch of time into things that aren't contributing to your bottom line, it's time to cut the fat. And I think another thing that could really take the time up is looking at Facebook groups, other bloggers, social media in non-productive ways. So now let's talk about some time beliefs. And I really like this part of the presentation because I really hope this helps a lot of you to realize that you are ready to hire someone right now. So there's this perception that you have to do everything by yourself. And I say this because I've heard so many bloggers tell me that they have trouble giving up control, and they don't want to hire someone else because that someone else is not going to do it the way that they would do it. And I think that that's actually a really good thing. If you've made a good hire, then why can't it be possible that there's someone out there who could be as dedicated to your brand as you are? You all know Ashley at this point, who is my assistant, and she's a big asset to be my travel muse. I ask her to bring me her ideas. So it's important not to micromanage these people. I mean, at the beginning, make sure that they understand everything, and they probably will take more of your time in the beginning while you're training them. That's just how it goes. But at some point, this person, especially if they are super committed to your brand and who you are and what you stand for, like Ashley is, they're going to have a lot of unique ideas that they could contribute. And so it's your job to encourage that from them, because then that's going to be what makes them passionate, dedicated, and want to stick around. Also, if it's the right person, they'll make it better than it could have been. So Ashley has contributed a lot of ideas to Be My Travel Muse that I wouldn't have really come up with on my own. Her help with YouTube has been huge. She watches YouTube a lot more than I do, so she's had some really good ideas with that. And she's just been getting better and better and better at the aesthetic part of the business. And then in terms of marketing, as you know, she comes from Facebook. So she's just a wonderful asset to be my travel muse. And I can't say enough good things about hiring people to help you. So, what if you can't afford to hire? There's a lot of ways that you can bring someone on now, actually. You can provide an internship to them. So let someone learn from you and be part of the building process. And that's actually how Ashley started for me. She was an intern for Be My Travel Muse. I think she worked for me for free even for a couple of months, and then it turned into something paid. So if you want to test someone out before having them be a full-timer for you, I think that's okay for a period of time. Yeah, so have it be maybe a trial for something that could become a full-time gig. And that's, again, exactly what happened with Ashley. She started off as a part-timer with me, and then eventually it turned into a full-time job. And that's pretty much always what I'm doing when I'm hiring part-time people. My hope is that one of them will prove themselves worthy to eventually become our second full-timer, which we're really close to needing at this point. And just know that every time you hire someone, it should anyway make a pretty meaningful contribution to your business. So it is better to hire sooner than to keep holding off, because I think that keeps you in the world where you're playing small. Again, a lot of bloggers don't want to hire someone for all the reasons I said before, or they don't think they can afford it, but it is the thing that really propels you forward. So where do you find such people? Two great ways that I'm a big fan of is ask from your audience. That's how I found Ashley. They're already familiar with your blog, they're already passionate about it, and advertising a paid opportunity is a good look. So it really is a good thing when you have multiple people working for you and you're able to compensate them for their work. I think that that really takes up the level of professionalism. I really like hiring college students. So Ashley, yes, is my full-timer, but almost everyone else who works for me is actually a college student. And I like that because they are often quite passionate. They are happy with part-time work. They don't want a full-time job right now. So that is really helpful for me because that gives me a good year to try them out, or sometimes even longer, before I decide to offer them a full-time job or not. So what I'm typically looking for is how much are they improving? How dedicated are they? Which that can be a bit of a problem with college students, but remember how you were when you were 20. But you know, they often do really good work. And so if you can be a bit patient, especially when they have like finals and things like that, or maybe hire more than one, you can really get some good employees that way. And you've got so many options in terms of campus culture, diversity, and people pursuing specific skill sets. Like I know if I hire someone from the University of California, they're going to be a bit more liberal and probably a bit more feminist like I am. Or if I want someone who is more conservative, then I can look elsewhere for that kind of person. And you know, these things do play in, at least for me, into my blog and how I present it to the world. So I definitely want someone involved in the brand who's going to share our company culture. So the big question is, should you pay? And in my humble opinion, an unpaid internship should really not last more than a couple of months. Maybe the student is in a class and they really need an internship to pass their class. Sometimes you'll find that, and in that case, it's okay. I mean, I did unpaid internships as well, but I got course credit for them. So I would say either start to pay them or go with someone new if you're not impressed after that couple month trial period, or you can just offer them money from the beginning. And so I hear some of you thinking, I cannot afford to hire someone. So this is a map of the US, and if you're not in the US, don't worry, I'm gonna get to you. But the states in blue and yellow are the ones where you can pay someone $7.25 per hour and be well within the law. So that actually leaves us quite a lot of options. Texas has a bunch of great schools. I have one girl working for me who lives in North Carolina, and I had another girl working for me who went to Tulane in Louisiana, which is a fantastic university. So I don't pay minimum wage. I pay, God, what is it? I think 15, yes, $15 an hour to these interns. So I'm doubling the minimum wage. And I bring this up because it makes it a more compelling opportunity. Is someone in California going to be psyched with that? Is someone in New York City going to be psyched with that? No, but I don't need to hire people in those two places. And I have learned that people in California, although they are, people who tend to share my company culture, I don't think that they're really going to be a long-term prospect for me to hire, because someone in the Bay Area, Los Angeles, most of the populated areas in California, is not going to be able to survive very well on $15 an hour, and they're not going to be happy with it long term. And so I'm happy to raise it when they show that they are talented and good at what they do. But personally, for me, it just makes more sense to hire someone who's going to be happier with a lower wage for longer. And we can also look at Canadian provinces for this. Manitoba and New Brunswick look pretty good, and Alberta does not look so good. So when you're looking to hire people, there are plenty of good people all over Canada, but maybe hiring someone in these provinces where they're going to be happier with a slightly lower wage is going to be better than hiring someone who lives in Vancouver, for example. This is Europe. So this map takes into account a monthly minimum wage. And I do know that it is more complicated in Europe because you've got people speaking different languages. So it's probably not as simple as it is for me in the US, hiring based on different states. But I just want to show this to you because, as you can see, these purple ones are a lot higher. But I know you've got plenty of English expats living in Portugal who can work in English if that's what you write in, and who can be happier with less money than, say, if they were living in London. I would never hire someone living in London because it's just going to be so expensive for them. And I'm just not at the point where I want to pay someone a London wage. I would rather pay someone a Portugal wage. So let's add this up. Just as an example to keep things simple, let's say you're hiring someone for 10 hours a week at $10 an hour, which, by the way, personally, as a college student, I would have been thrilled with. I don't have to leave my room and I can do cool online work for $10 an hour. Like, yeah, definitely sign me up. So that's going to cost you $400 a month. If you want to pay them a bit more, $15 an hour, that's still only $600 a month. And then if you want to hire someone full-time at $15 an hour, which they're probably not going to be happy with that forever, but I do think that that's not a terrible starting wage if someone lives in one of the cheaper states where they don't pay as much for their rent, food, etc. That's only $25K a month. So let's say that you take a writing role or a virtual assistant role, and you are working 15 hours a week and you're being paid $20 an hour. You're getting $1,200 a month, and yet you're paying this intern who's helping you only $400 a month. So now your hourly wage has doubled. And I don't know if maybe to some of you this feels icky. So the way to do this ethically is, if you're working as a virtual assistant for someone, I do think you need to let them know that it's a team of you working on their project, not just you. I think that as long as the work is good, they're not going to care, but probably you need to be the one, if there's anything confidential or that should really only be privy to you, like don't be handing out passwords and access to an intern, but have them help you with all of the busy work that doesn't require that kind of access. So if you're a VA for someone and they want you to do research or pitching or writing or anything like that, you can definitely have an intern help you with doing that research. So I think that there are ethical ways to do this. And if you are freelance writing, I feel like it's less necessary to tell somebody that you have some research help or writing help. Plenty of interns are happy to do ghostwriting. And I eventually hired a ghostwriter to help me when I was writing articles about festivals for About.com. So that paid me $75 an article. And then I found someone who was happy to do it for, I think, $40 an article. And so I didn't really want to spend the time on this contract anymore. So I just let them do it. And I made sure that I edited it and that it still looked good and that I added in my own voice here and there. But the client was happy, I was happy, the person who I was paying was happy. So it worked out pretty well for all parties involved. And I didn't really feel like I needed to tell the person who hired me that I was getting help. I don't think they care as long as it looks good. Unless, of course, it's in your contract that it's only you who does it. So read that through. And, if it feels weird to you to do this, just remember that every time you've been an employee, this is exactly what's going on. The CEO, founder, whatever, has decided that they can't do all the work themselves and that they need to hire someone else to help them. And you're not getting paid the same as the boss or the CEO. So just just think of this as how businesses are structured, and you are providing a job for someone, and if they're happy with what you're paying them, then everybody's happy. So in my opinion, you can hire someone now to help you. This is what I'm saying. Another way to look at this is if you are a VA for someone, but you want someone to work for you on your blog, you can still do all the VA stuff for this person, but you can get help for your personal brand. And then you can turn around and afford to pay that person because you're getting income. So just try to think smarter, not harder in terms of your time and your work. If there's anything on your blog that you just hate doing, that's tedious, maybe hire someone else to do it and take a role where you're actually being paid what you want, getting opportunities that you want, and you're able to pass on the things that you hate to someone else who's happy to do them because they're a college student, and it's better than working at McDonald's. So if you've been part of the Facebook group that preceded this coaching group, you'll know that I am a big fan of the book Essentialism by Greg McKeown. The book argues that you can find yourself or he asks these questions. Have you ever found yourself struggling with information overload? Have you felt overworked and underutilized? Do you feel busy but not productive? And I felt like this was speaking right to me. So I really felt this way in 2015 when my blog was on a growth trajectory. Yeah, I felt like I was working all the time. Like I was just in my room in Berlin all the time. And what I found that I was really doing though is I would check my affiliates every single day because it felt good to see that I was at least making some money every single day. I checked Google Analytics every single day as well. I would get on Instagram and I would scroll on there. And the worst thing actually was Facebook. I was in a lot of Facebook groups and I would pay a lot of attention to what other bloggers were doing. And that is a really slippery slope. And none of these things are actually necessary for you to be doing on a daily or even weekly basis. So I left the blogging Facebook groups because frankly, they didn't help me and there was a lot of drama involved in those, especially back then. I know that some of you are finding writing opportunities in these groups. So if the group is helping you, then I would stay in it and just be really diligent about how you're checking it and make sure that you're only checking it like somewhat infrequently so that you're not spending all your time on there getting involved in drama, reading about the drama, which adds nothing to our lives. And, I do think it's important to help other people, help answer questions, but this is why we have our private Slack group where we can all do that for each other in a way that is drama-free, distraction-free, because it's Slack and not Facebook. There's no news feed. And I just would encourage you to really lean on this group if you have specific questions. If for whatever reason you can't get them answered here, I would love to know that so that I can do better. So I don't have Facebook on my phone. It hasn't been on my phone for years. I do also really recommend the Newsfeed Eradicator. It's a Google Chrome app, and when you open up Facebook, all you see is a quote. So there is no newsfeed anymore. And for me, I only open Facebook because I run a couple of groups on there that are important to look at, but I can't think of a reason, honestly, why you need the newsfeed. I really think it's actually quite toxic these days. I stopped reading other travel blogs. I don't read other travel blogs at all. There are a couple blogs that I do read for pleasure. Mark Manson and Wait But Why are two of them because they're super well researched and I get value out of them. But I don't read the news. I completely detoxed from the news in March and I haven't gone back. So I already talked about that. But there are no news apps on my phone. I actually deleted the Google app because what it would do is show me headlines every time I opened it, and I didn't want that anymore. So I only have Safari now. And all the news apps that came on Apple are also deleted from my phone. I started to realize that I just couldn't check affiliates daily because while it feels good, it does not help with productivity. Okay, just don't be looking all the time at all of these numbers. And I know that it might make you feel good for a second, but it's actually stealing time away from your day, and it's just really not necessary. Look when you need to in order to get information and data. Feel free to check monthly, but don't be checking daily. I don't have any notifications pop up on my phone or my computer, only texts and WhatsApp and now Slack as well, so that I can be available for you guys. But no other app is allowed to show me any notifications. And my family and friends know if you want to get a hold of me, you use text or you use WhatsApp, and it works brilliantly. I also got very structured in journaling daily about what I would do that day so that I couldn't get distracted, because my biggest problem is I used to sit down at the computer and not have a really clear idea of what I was going to do. So I just went for the dopamine first, and that was the affiliates, the Google Analytics, and the email and the social media. And then an hour or two would go by and I would wonder why I didn't have enough time to write on my blog. So let's talk about when to charge what, earning potential beliefs. So when we talk about what to charge, I really think in the beginning it is fine to do some brand work for free, and I would encourage you to do that if there are brands out there that you really want to work with and that you feel very aligned with, so that you can build historical data for your media kit. And this is something that we've talked about in months past, the importance of building historical data so that you can really prove to brands and organizations that would want to work with you that you deserve to be paid. It makes your pitches stronger, and it shows a proven track record, both of which are super important. You can get this data from affiliates, from link clicks, and you can find that in the Google Analytics tutorial, and people clearly stating that they have followed your advice. So I keep a document with screenshots and emails from people telling me that they have followed my advice for XYZ, or that someone made a purchase through me. I do this through my surveys that I do probably bi-yearly now. So I would just make sure that you're always collecting this data so that you can make yourself a much stronger pitch for when paying opportunities could be coming your way. But at some point, if you keep taking jobs for lower pay than you want, it's going to be what you keep getting, because you're going to be filling your time with things that just don't pay very well. So you need to decide at some point that you won't discount your time that much. And when it has brand power, act similarly with your brand and charge more to fewer people for the exposure. So before you accept a job or a free product, really ask yourself if it's worth it. Because the more paid stuff that you do, the more you're going to really need to make it exclusive. So in the beginning, don't just take everything. Take things that are truly aligned with you, that you're passionate about, and build a really strong case study around it. And that will really help you in the long run. So I realized about at the end of year 2 of my blogging journey that if I only took low paying jobs, that I was basically making an agreement that I wasn't worth more than that. So I decided that I will no longer take any writing opportunities that only paid me $25 to $50 an article, that I was worth at least 75, which if a place is not willing to pay you at least $75 for an article, they're probably never going to pay you more than that. So again, it's fine if articles are that cheap for you to maybe take the opportunity and pass it on to someone who is less expensive. Again, I would go with someone in your native language though. I wouldn't go to Fiverr for this, because I don't trust that these are not plagiarized, and usually they're really bad. So make sure that this is someone who's actually going to provide something good to you. Extra points if they are referred to you by someone else. But it doesn't have to be this big thing that takes years and years for you to be worth charging more for your time. Just work out what you want to be paid hourly and only take the things that give you that. And I know it may seem like, oh no, that means I'm not going to get on any opportunities, but a weird thing happened when I decided I wasn't going to take any more freelance writing roles that paid me nothing. I started to get more opportunities that paid me something, and I had the time to say yes to them. So this is my progression. I was writing articles for $50 to $75 an article for my first couple years of travel blogging. Or actually, I didn't even get those roles until after my first year. I only worked on my own blog the first year for zero money going through my savings. This was good in a lot of ways. It really helped me to practice my speed writing. It helped me with research. And then eventually, after I got that practice under my belt, I started to hire other people to help me with these articles. And you'd be surprised at how many people are very happy to write articles for $10 an hour. Just make sure that they're being diligent and that you're actually making money off of this situation. Then around year 3, I think, I started to charge a bit to go on press trips. So I was only charging like a couple $100s. And this was after I already had some press trips under my belt and had the historical data to prove that it had been worth it for the client who sent me. My first press trip that was just for me came to me at the end of year 3. I quoted them $1,200 and we met at 1,000. And then my first 5-figure contract, I almost quoted $5,000 for because I just didn't think they would say yes to more. And I remember talking to a friend about it, and she was like, I would charge at least $10,000 for what they're asking you for, because it was like a year-long exclusivity contract, 4 posts going on Be My Travel Muse, and an equal, I think 12 posts actually going up on my Instagram. So after that conversation with her, I decided to quote them $14,000 and they said yes. So that tells me I could have actually even gone higher. At that point, my brand was worth it though. And that client definitely made their money back from the agreement and the thing that we had going. I was able to rank #1 on Google for every single article that I wrote for them. And so that all goes back to the search engine optimization, which we've already talked about. But if you're doing all the things right, then your brand should be worth something at some point. And this for me was at year 5 that I was able to get the 5-figure contract. And we've renewed that twice now for more money each time. So I had a small audience that I couldn't really monetize when I was writing articles for 50 to 75 an hour, or an article. Yeah, definitely not that per hour. But I did make affiliate income back then. It wasn't crazy huge, but it was something. So between the two, I was able to live really cheaply in cheap places and keep traveling. So that's kind of another key thing that almost every blogger I know had to do, is to travel pretty cheaply and live in places that were not expensive. So for me, that was Berlin, which is shockingly cheap, and Southeast Asia for my first few years. When I was at the range of 13 to 30K unique visitors per month on my blog, that's when I charged the $400 to go on a few press trips. It wasn't until I had about 50,000 uniques on my blog and 50,000 on Instagram that I quoted the 1,200 and we met at 1,000 for a press trip. Not saying that's what you need, but that's where I was. And then I was closer to 100,000 followers and I think 200,000 uniques a month when I got that 5-figure contract. But my way is not the only way. So I know that it, for me, it's taken both YouTube and Instagram and my blog for me to get really well-paying gigs. But that's because I am not as focused on a niche as Sylvia is. So she freelanced first while her audience was small and her focus was wide, like everyone does. She lived in cheap countries during this time, so she was traveling through the Caucasus region, and that's what she specialized in until she decided to laser focus on Norway. So she really honed in on her niche, and she makes money not from press trips, although she does a few here and there, nor brand deals, but mostly from her affiliates. And the same is true for Lauren, who we'll talk to later this month. So I really want to show you other examples of people who are doing things that don't heavily rely on social media for them to make their money. And we've talked about this in Slack chat before, so I really wanted to put it here. What is the point when I keep encountering setbacks? How can I stay motivated when I feel like I'm just, taking 2 steps forward and sliding 1 back, or taking 1 step forward and sliding 2 back? So I think the main issue is when we're surprised that we encounter a setback, because the sort of hockey stick analogy where things are just low, 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 and then they shoot up and never go down again is unrealistic. You can't just expect to only have growth, 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 sunny days, and never have anything happen that takes you back a notch. It's just not how the world works. So closely examine and question those people who never speak or acknowledge their setbacks and only make it look like they just have success after success, because that's just not the reality for anyone. So this is my traffic. I took this snapshot in, I think, November when I created this. And this is my snapshot of the previous year's traffic leading up to that. I was just featured on a pretty major podcast and in the New York Times. So my traffic is looking pretty nice right now. I'm back up to the 10,000 hits a day, but look where it was. And then I think you can probably guess what happened when it took that huge dive, COVID. So I was getting almost 20,000 hits per day. And then all of a sudden, just boom, down to almost nothing. Advertisers cut revenue. I did not have any brand deals coming my way in March and April, although things are really picking up now, which I'm very happy about. So I decided not to give up though. I decided to pivot. I launched this coaching program. I launched my clothing line. I ended up inviting people to do meditations with me. I just leaned into all the things that I had been wanting to do that I felt passionate about and wasn't doing previously. And what I can say now at this point, looking back on it all, is that I, obviously couldn't control it, and I'm grateful for parts of it. There's always a silver lining, and I learned a lot. So you really have to expect the curveballs. Everything has ebbs and flows, absolutely everything. Relationships, life, your finances. I'm sure as you look back on the history of your life, things have ebbed and flowed, and it's really the ebbs actually that teach us a lot, as painful as they are. So our expectations will not be met over and over, but if we refuse to learn from them or keep going, only that's when we actually fail. So it's okay if you launch something or work on a project and it doesn't go exactly as you expected, because I think you will find that you're learning so much, and by trying things, you're really propelling yourself forward. So I can think of so many things throughout my history that I thought were going to be really good ideas that other people were going to love too. I thought that every course I sold was going to do better than it did. But when I look back on it, they did make good money. It just didn't happen all right away. And it takes a bit of time. And I think that's the hardest thing, is just being patient. But now I have a business that's sustainable, because when you go viral, for example, you might bring a bunch of people in because they liked the one video that you made or one post that you made. But what really matters is staying power. And when we think about all of the knowledge that we draw on today, all of the authors whose work really matters to us today, look at the Beatles playing for 10 years, was it, in Hamburg before putting out their first album. Like, just don't forget that it takes time, and that it takes time for everyone. And it's just the reality of the situation. Everyone had to start somewhere. So I'm obviously a big Swiftie, and that's why I'm putting her here, because I love her vulnerability, and she's super successful mostly because of that. And, obviously she had a really long road to get where she is too. So just remember that that's true for everyone. Okay, so now let's discuss Okay, so Laura wants to know where I find college students to hire. There's this program called Handshake, and it's at least got all of the US based colleges on there. And if you're in Europe writing in English, if you're in Canada, you can hire a US based student. So feel free. Who's the author of the Essentialism book? I believe that's how it's written, Greg McKeown. If you Google Essentialism with that name, it'll come up for you. Highly recommend this book. I've read it twice. It's super helpful. The other books that I really love on the topic of productivity are The 4 Hour Work Week. even if not everything he says is relevant to you, there are just such good tidbits in there. And I listen to it on audio. I think it's very good on audio, and it really helped me have a lot of light bulb moments. I like Tim Ferriss. I know that there are people who are critical of him out there, but you know, I think his advice is really good. And I also really like his book, Tools of Titans. It's a really powerful book. That one's way better to have in book form, though, because he keeps referencing other people who he's interviewed, and it's nice to be able to flip. So if you're looking for some inspo, and you really do need to work time into your schedule to read, makes you a better writer, really helps that you can keep learning. It's a cheap way to keep learning because books are not that expensive and you can often get them from the library. Reading and continual learning has been completely essential for me. So that newsfeed eradicator, it might only be a mobile plugin, or it might only be a computer plugin, but like I said, I don't have Facebook on my phone, and I really encourage you to delete it too. I can't think of a reason to keep checking in with it. Is working with brands and going on press trips the same thing? My IG is not really growing, but I'm not sure if I can pitch press trips primarily based on blog traffic. That's coming from Teresa. No, working with a brand does not necessarily have to do with a press trip. So I worked with PacSafe for a while, and that was mostly blog post based. And that was when I showed them that I had really good affiliate income from already recommending their products. So I recommended their products for like 3 years before I ended up working with them. And at first, actually, our agreement was that I would write for their blog. And then I was like, hey, I have a blog too. Look how great it would be if I also wrote this on my blog. So I just turned that into something that became a brand partnership. And the talk with with Liz Carlson was really good too, because she talked about how she pitches, and she's very good about following up. So if you didn't see her interview yet, I would recommend watching it, because I didn't even think that cold pitching worked before we talked to her, but apparently it does. Yeah, I think Instagram can be tough. Again, we talked about social media previously, and I think the people who are doing it really well are the ones who, like How Not to Travel Like a Basic Bitch. Her photos aren't like crazy amazing, but I think that she adds a lot of value by sorry, by being educational, and also a lot of people can relate to what she's saying. Other people who do really well are Color Me Courtney, like I showed you with Reels, and I love the Plant Queen because they just spread so much joy. Are their photos amazing? No, but they are also very educational with what they share, and they just are always happy in their photos, and I think it just brightens people's day. So look to examples that are really strong in a niche and look at why they're doing well. And I think that you'll find almost no one who is newer and doing really well is a generalist. Almost everyone who's newer and doing really well is leaning really hard into a niche. So if you are prepared to do that for Instagram, then you can do that really well. But if your Instagram's not really growing, then I would look at making more money from affiliates from your blog. I would look at maybe YouTube, because I've found that it's easier to grow on there right now than Instagram. Again, a lot more work, but I think it's worth it. And I do think that you can get enough brand stuff and enough affiliate stuff to make it so that press trips aren't necessary for you. So as much as press trips are nice, and it is kind of a dream job in a lot of ways, it's a lot of stress as well. And the money can be great from them, but if you're not finding that your Instagram is growing, then it might not make sense for you to have press trips be the thing that you are trying to get. You can get press trips definitely through YouTube as well, but brand partnerships can be really lucrative. So that 5-figure brand partnership that I have doesn't require travel from me. It just requires me to write about them and to post about them on my Instagram, usually for trips that I'm already doing on my own. So in a way, it's still a press trip. It's still paying me to go have a really fun adventure, but it's completely on my own terms this way. So that's another way to do it without needing a crazy strong Instagram. A lot of companies care about Instagram, yes, but that's not the only thing that certain companies care about. And I really don't think Instagram is going to continue to be as powerful later as it is right now, because I'm just seeing the algorithm really like killing not just me, but a lot of people. And that's what they did with Facebook. And on Facebook, it's almost like no advertiser cares about it anymore. I think video is the future, personally. All right, I'll open it up so that you guys can just jump in and speak your questions.
So I have a question. I'm wondering how you find a balance between working and your private life. Do you have a routine, or do you just look at it day by day?
This is one of the hardest things for me because I have like really workaholic tendencies, and so I will just keep doing things. And I just started to realize that I wasn't happy doing that. So I never watched TV before, but now I have a Netflix account and I watch it sometimes. I also picked up a yoga practice. So I do yoga with Adriene almost every day. And I have more fun cooking now. So I make it an experience rather than something that just has to get done. So personally, these are just things that I like to do. Reading is a big thing for me as well. So I am pretty much always have a book that I'm reading, and I switch between ones that are like either fiction, or I really like historical fiction, and I make sure that it's a really good writer. So I think Shantaram is amazing. It's huge and it's just so well written, and it makes me a better writer to read these people's work. Where the Crawdads Sing is another one where it's just so good. I couldn't put it down. So I recommend reading works by really good authors as well for your downtime, because you kind of get two benefits from that.
Mm-hmm.
But I know the struggle. It's hard to have downtime too for some of us.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, spending more time outside as well.
Yeah.
Even in the winter, just bundle up.
How do you prioritize? Like, if you have a bunch of things to do or a bunch of ideas, how do you prioritize them?
I ask myself what's closest to money, and that usually gives me my answer. So if I'm sitting down to do something, pretty much always the blog takes precedence over all else, and that's why it's my strongest platform. And I've never regretted that. There's just so many ways to diversify a blog, and it's also my biggest income driver in terms of ads. And if I didn't have that, if I was only relying on YouTube and Instagram, I would really be struggling right now, even with over 100,000 followers.
Do you still like set aside time for like other projects you want to work on, or do you like kind of just put them off until you feel like you're ready to get to them?
Absolutely. I mean, this was one example. Like, this group is an example of another project that I launched, and this obviously takes up time, but I really like it, and so it's something that I've wanted to continue with. YouTube at one point was a brand new endeavor for me, so I've made it a point of getting the YouTube videos figured out and filmed and out, and the more I do them, the more I am efficient with them. And then in terms of, let's see, when I made the Photo Muse Masterclass, I actually shot that all within like a 3-week span over the summer, and so I just budgeted in, like, I'm not going to travel for these 3 weeks so that I can work on my project. And it's all I did basically all day, healthy or not, it's how I did it. And then that was done. So that's basically how I've prioritized things. But no matter what, no matter what else is going on, I make sure that I'm posting on the blog at least 3 times per week, that's getting done no matter what. So that's my number one. This is my sort of MVP is my blog. And so I always prioritize it because it makes me the most money right now.
Also, for like scheduling out your week, do you usually like sit down like Sunday night and say like, okay, I'm gonna work on this each day? Or do you go like every night or every morning and say, okay, like I didn't get this done yesterday, so I'm gonna keep working on this? Or like, how do you prioritize your weekly schedule?
So that's why there's a journal for you guys every month in here. And that's exactly what I do. I follow the journal. And so I have my big goal overall, and then I break that down. And then each day I sit down and ask myself how I'm going back to the greater goal. And I only set 2 big things, maximum 3 for me to do each day. And if that doesn't get done, I'm checking back in at night and I'm saying, okay, so I'll do this tomorrow. It took more time than I thought it would, and that's okay. I think we get into the danger zone when we're like, there's 10 things I need to do today. It's like, no, we have one main thing we're focusing on this month. Everything we do is going back to supporting that one main thing because we've decided that's our MVP for the month. And each thing we do each day is going back to supporting that main goal.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so use the journal. It's definitely, for me, essential.
I think we might have talked about it in the past, but is there a certain way that you streamline your writing or make that just that act of writing more efficient? Because that's what I always get caught up on, is spending forever writing my blog posts and possibly overthinking them.
So where do you think you're spending the time?
I don't know. I just feel like it doesn't like flow out of me easily. So like I think about as I'm writing, like I don't think I could ever speed write. Like you were saying, some things help you with speed writing. I don't think that I'm at that point to be able to do that. So I'm just trying to figure out ways to just get my thoughts out on paper quickly and then go back and make it.
So what limiting belief might you have
Sounds
about
nice.
speed writing?
No, yeah, I don't know. It's just like I feel like it doesn't flow out of me, and so I don't know if it's like just like creativity blocks or writing block or something like that. But I'm just trying to figure out ways to overcome that so that I can be more efficient in the blog post writing.
So 2 things, or 3 things. First thing is to write as close to when it happened as you can so that it does flow more freely. And so that's why I will use the notes app on my phone and like type it in when I'm on the bus leaving the thing I just did, or if I'm on a road trip, like if I'm not the one driving, I will type out like what we just did so that it's already kind of done for me as we go, so that it doesn't become this thing I have to handle later. I spend time on flights writing as well, because probably I'm just leaving a place that I want to write about. So why not just do it on the flight out? I'm just sitting there anyway. I also tend to speak into my phone to get the blog posts out quickly. And it doesn't always understand me, but I just try to be almost robotic in what I say so that it's super clear. And then I edit it immediately as I go. And for me, that's really fast. I got good at speed writing in high school, actually, because I was in AP English, and for the AP English test, we had to write a full essay in 45 minutes. And then all through college, I just had so many essays all the time that I had to write. A lot of our final exams were essay based, and I was always coming to the class first and handing mine in first and getting A's on them because I had been forced to learn in high school. So I would do some exercises where you're forcing yourself to speed write. You need to get your idea out concisely. You need to have a strong thesis statement, and then you need to spend the rest of your post backing up that thesis statement, right? That's it in a nutshell. Same applies to travel blogging. Make your point early. Everything you write should go back to supporting that point. Eliminate all fluff. Put in only important information. Write it well from a place of creativity. And that's why I like to read really good writers, so that I always remember to do that. And let go of the idea that you could never speed write, because it's something you learn.
Yeah.
It's something you can train yourself to do.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I add something to that really quick?
Yeah.
So sometimes I do wait way too long to write about a trip that I went on, and I'm not nearly as inspired later. And it is hard to get motivated to write, but I have found that if I just let myself write a really just poor version and just get the bad out of my system, I'll go back and I'll rewrite it or I'll edit it, and that also helps too. Because like once you get going, like the memories do come back and it starts flowing better, but you have to like let it, like sometimes you just like write something terrible and just like get it all out there and fix it later. That's what works for me sometimes.
Yeah, I think like even in school, I didn't necessarily procrastinate, but I would wait until the last minute to submit it because I try to make it as good as it can until it needs to be done. And so I think trying to set hard deadlines for myself too, because if I don't have deadlines, I'm just going to keep working on it and keep working on it, which I know could be a big problem.
Who was it who said like 10,000 shitty words? Some book author was like, I just sit down and I make myself write, whether it's good or not, doesn't matter. I just like train myself to put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard and get it out. And I really like kudos to Mrs. Penner because her making us speed write all the time in class is why I'm good at it now. It's just because I had to, and the amount of times that this timer went off and I wasn't done, I just had to learn from that and keep going with it. So I do see some bloggers saying that blog posts take them like 10, 12 hours, and I'm like, I don't see how or why, because it's just not how it goes for me. I'm able to get like the research done and the stuff written in usually 5 to 6, unless it's like one of the biggest, most meatiest, most well-researched articles I've put out in a while. And you should put those out from time to time, but it shouldn't be every single article is taking you 10 hours. So try to have some in there that are quicker. It will go quicker if you write it closer to when it happened, and it's going to be better too. And yeah, I would set the timer right and see if you can get something out in 45 minutes. And if you can't, then just keep going until you can. You don't look thrilled. What's wrong?
Wait, me?
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm just processing. I'm just trying to figure out like the best way to do it. But I do think setting a timer will kind of force me to put out as much as I can in a certain time span. So I'm just thinking.
Okay. Yeah. If you write it and you're like, this is bad, then that's okay. Like we're just learning, you know? It's just getting to the point where it's good. It will be bad probably the first time.
I'll try it. I'll let you guys know how it goes.
Okay. Jillian asked if I have hours that I work during the week. I don't like that. So no, that's not what works for me, because sometimes I want to take a Wednesday off and go do whatever. And then I have a Saturday that I do want to work, especially with my boyfriend's schedule. He often works weekends. So I would actually rather not be out doing things with all the people on weekends. And that's what I love about this job, is that I can work when I want. So I don't have hours, but some people that works really well for them to have set hours. So I think that's just something that you got to do if that works well for you. But again, I think it's how we're using those hours. So writing it down, if anyone is willing to do that, like writing down what you're doing at every point of the day, it just makes you so conscious of every action that you take. And it's a really good practice. That actually comes from Marie Forleo, who is mega successful. I don't know if you guys know about her, but she has a book that she came out with recently that's really good on Audible. She performs it herself. And that's one of the things she suggests. And it was actually really powerful for me to be like, oh, I spent an hour doing this thing that didn't matter.
How much time per day do you spend reading?
I don't know the name of her book right now, but it'll come up if you, oh, Everything is Figure Outable. That was Elena's question in the chat. So how much time do I spend reading? That kind of depends on the day. Maybe an hour or two in the evening, because I used to spend that time like scrolling on my phone, and then I didn't want to do that anymore. So I decided to read with that hour instead, and it's been really a nice thing to do. And all these things I'm suggesting to you, like I'm not perfect for sure. Sometimes I scroll and I'm like, where did the time go? Why did I do that? But it's being conscious of it and working towards being more respectful of your time every day.
I was wondering how you set your boundaries towards other people, for instance, that you work with, or family or friends. I tend to feel overwhelmed sometimes if, for instance, people I work for send me an email like, "Oh, can you do this tomorrow or the day after?" And it's supposed to be free time, but I always say yes, which is not good. But
So you can kind of train people to know not to do that to you. Maybe, and this is just an idea, if someone sends you something to work on and they want you to do it like immediately, you can say, hey, yes, I can do that this time, but next time, like, just let me know what the deadline is of a project when you give it to me. And I'm so happy to work within those parameters. But you know, most of the time I do need a little bit more structure and a little bit more leeway, and hopefully that client should be okay with that and understanding of that. And if they're not, maybe you need to fire them. And then in terms of friends and family, that's why I don't have notifications turned on. So if someone texts me or WhatsApps me, that's something that's going to pop up on my phone. If and only if I don't have it on sleep mode. So I have my phone on sleep mode most of the time, not airplane mode, but sleep mode, which at least on the iPhone means that you aren't bothered by anything except for phone calls will come through. So if it's truly an emergency, someone's going to call me. And if they don't do that, then it's not an emergency. So that's how I feel about it. You can also let clients know that you have certain times that you're checking your email if you need to be even more like with them. But I mean, if I have a friend or family member text me and a few hours go by before I respond, I don't feel like that should be a problem for them.
yeah, I think for the last 5 years, I kept the sound of my phone off. So it's not, if I leave it somewhere, then only when I realize, oh, where's my phone, then I will see if there's messages or anything. But I think mostly on the working area, because like you, I schedule my own times, which is very convenient because sometimes, like right now here, it's late and the client is in a time zone where it's maybe afternoon or something like that. So, you know, you can find your ways in that. But that also brings up the fact that I actually always have time to do extra stuff or to do something extra for someone. I'm not sure if I'm kind of maybe addicted to the fact that I can help people always. Maybe it's a weird thing, but
Well, that's good to look at. I mean, I know that Ashley's not going to reply to me on weekends or after certain hours in Malaysia. So if I send her a message on the weekend because that's when I think of it, I don't expect her to reply until Monday. And that's because she trained me to know that. Because I might not have boundaries, but if she's like, hey, I don't work on the weekends, then I'm like, oh, okay, that's fair. You shouldn't. So if you have a client who's in another time zone and they're messaging you at 9 p.m. your time, it's so totally reasonable for you to reply to them in the morning hours when you want to work again.
it's work on progress.
Yeah, and this is a struggle so many people have. Like I have clients emailing me at 9 at night sometimes, and I only know that because I'm looking at my email. So this is my big thing is email. But I think by being really diligent about being incredibly aware of how we're filling our day can be enough. And also saying like, is that going to bring me any closer to my goals? Is that going to bring me any closer to what's paying me right now or close to paying me? Um, Personally, I think blog traffic is the most valuable thing. So that's what I'm always prioritizing. But as a freelancer, if you're finding that you've got more work than you can do, maybe you can pass some along to another person and have them working for you too. And your client can be happy and you can be happy and you can raise your hourly rate. Any other questions? Nice to see you again, Maya. All right, well, if we're all good. All right, well, in that case, I will see you guys after Christmas. We're going to talk to Lauren. It's emailed out to you, but I feel like it was the 27th, was it? So the 29th. So we're going to talk to her on the 29th at 5 p.m. Pacific. She's in New Zealand, so that's what worked well for her. And she'll tell us all about how she doesn't use Instagram and does really well for herself. I think this will be a nice perspective for everyone to hear. And if you can't come live, then no worries, it'll be recorded for you. And happy holidays to everyone. See you in a couple weeks. Bye.